G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright people, so Canelo Alvarez stops Caleb Plant in the 11th round. This was a good fight. It was a much more competitive fight than I would have expected. And that's credit to Caleb Plant, definitely, for making it a more competitive fight. He was very tricky in there at times for Canelo. I'd hoped to do this fight like straight after. Talk about it straight after my initial thoughts, but I didn't see it. Didn't see it live. I only saw it this morning. Because I'll tell you why. I planned on just going to sleep and waking up to watch this fight because I just wasn't doing an all-nighter. Because I've been away for a few days and I just didn't want to do an all-nighter. So I googled times this fight would start at UK time, and they all said between 5 to 5:15. So I'm thinking, okay, get up about 4:30, maybe catch the end of an undercard fight, and we're good to go. No, so wake up at 4:30, and I'm literally, the fight has literally just ended. So I was like, damn. So I said, right, I'll have to watch it in the morning and give my thoughts then. Obviously, the general consensus was, from seeing what people were saying online, was that it was competitive. Some people had Caleb Plant. Well, the general consensus was Canelo was winning the fight. And for me, he definitely was, having watched the fight. But a lot of people had it closer than I would have thought. I really did think Canelo would just walk straight through Caleb Plant, pin him up against the ropes, let body shots go, and I really didn't give Caleb Plant much of a chance to be that competitive in it. But he done a better job, some would say, than Billy Joe Saunders, and I would say he did a better job than Billy Joe Saunders personally. Definitely than Callum Smith. Oh, you can't argue with that. I have a nice cup of tea as well. So that's one good thing about doing it in the morning. I could have my tea. But he done a better job than I gave him credit for, so kudos to Caleb Plant. The first round, Canelo came out quite slow. Never been the fastest starter has Canelo Alvarez, and Caleb Plant straight away was on the jab. Caleb Plant was throwing a lot more shots than we're used to seeing him. I believe after, 4 or 5 rounds, he had thrown exponentially more jabs than Canelo, and he thrown more shots just in general than Canelo. I think it was the 6th round was the only round where Canelo actually threw more shots than Caleb Plant. In the early part anyway, which shows how active Caleb Plant was. He was doing what I said he needed to do. He was moving on the back foot. It was certainly not in the first round. He wasn't staying on the ropes, which is something he's made a habit of doing. He wasn't staying on the ropes, and at times in this fight, the only times where he was on the ropes wasn't down to his choice. It was Canelo cutting him off and making the ring smaller, so he was kind of forced to lay on the ropes. He wasn't doing it by his own accord, which I felt that he did do in fights like against Zeus Cascai, where he just decided, I'll stay on the ropes, which was a bad idea. He didn't do it against Canelo out of choice. He done it because Canelo was just backing him up and letting shots go. So the first round I gave to Caleb Plant was very impressed. Thought his jab looked good. He was using his reach. He was moving. And interestingly, he was looking at little sneaky uppercuts in this fight. Little left uppercuts that he was landing on Canelo time and again. And that was good because Canelo was coming in more or less with the earmuffs on. He wasn't moving his head that much as we're used to seeing him. So whenever he would come in with the earmuffs on, you could see Caleb Plant was looking to set the uppercut up, which is it's a very good shot. If you've got a fighter who's coming in, his shoulders are a bit squared, earmuffs on, landing an uppercut is an excellent idea. The second round came, and that was when Canelo Alvarez started going to the body, which is what I expected, to be honest with you. Slow them legs down, get rid of that movement, go to the body. That's exactly what Canelo did. He landed significantly more body shots throughout the course of this fight. Caleb Plant not noted as a big body puncher anyway, it has to be said, but Canelo was really investing in it, and it was effective pressure. Canelo was able to pressure Caleb Plant without overexerting himself. Some people have said that Canelo cutting off the ring is not the most effective, and he was a little bit more effective in this fight, to be fair, but yeah, it's definitely a complaint people have had about him, or criticism I should say, and it is just. But Canelo in this fight, he looked in control at all times. He really did. Whenever Caleb Plant was, keeping his range and was jabbing, Canelo just seemed to have an answer. Caleb Plant was moving his head kind of very awkwardly, kind of dipping down with his head whenever Canelo would come in looking to land the right hands. So a lot of them were kind of wisping by, and some of them were landing. Referee did have a few little words to Caleb Plant now and again about kind of dipping down very low. He was pushing Canelo's head down at times when Canelo would come in close, which the referee, Russell Mora, did again have words with Caleb Plant with. Again, I felt Canelo, his just better shot selection, his accuracy. He was landing the quality shots in the rounds. You know, I gave Caleb Plant 3 rounds in this fight. Some people had it closer, some people had it wider. Steve Farhood's scorecard was very off, in my opinion. I mean, he gave Caleb Plant the first round and the third round, and then he gave every other round to Canelo. Now, I disagree with that. I gave Caleb Plant the first round. The third round was close. Now, it was close. Personally, because rounds can be subjective, I gave that round to Canelo. However, the 7th and the 8th round, I gave both of them to Caleb Plant. I felt like he did the better work in those rounds. Having said all that, you could see what Canelo was doing in there. You could see that he was slowly getting to Caleb Plant. The shots that he was looking to land were getting closer. Caleb Plant, he was throwing a lead left hook early on, which was kind of, I thought was a decent shot. I thought it was kind of making Canelo think a little bit, but he kind of neglected that late on. Maybe it was down to fatigue. Maybe he was a bit wary that maybe Canelo was reading the angle of the shot and what he was going to expect. He was worried about getting countered, because there was this time in the 7th round where Canelo just stayed on the ropes. He just stayed on the ropes, was kind of egging Caleb Plant to come at him, and Caleb Plant was just looking to feint. He wasn't really trying to do anything, because I think he knew, right, Canelo is wanting me to open up so he can either counter me or, you know, move me and get me on the ropes. Don't bite it. I think at times he was a bit too cautious, was Caleb Plant, in this fight. So it reminded me very similar to the Kovalev fight. Kovalev was like that as well, but Kovalev was almost even more negative if you think about it, because he really just abandoned ship and went to the jab, and that was it. Caleb Plant did try a few things, and I think it was the 8th round where he landed a little combination on Canelo. And he actually landed a right hand on Canelo at the end of that combination. And you could see Canelo he wasn't hurt, but he was angry almost with himself for letting the shot go through. You go and look at the very back end of the 8th round. It's kind of like, it didn't look the cleanest combination, but at the end there was a right hand from Caleb Plant, and it did land on Canelo Alvarez. And you could see almost a look of anger that, like, how did I let that shot hit me? That's kind of how it looked to Canelo, just from what I could see. Now, going into the 10th round, that was kind of when Canelo really started, you know, upping the ante. And you could see the Plant was maybe starting to feel the pace into the 11th round, very early in the 11th round. Canelo lands a left hook on Caleb Plant after the referee shouts break. Now, it wasn't hitting on the break, it wasn't anything like that, but they got into a clinch. The referee broke them up, and Canelo took a few steps forward, landed it on Caleb Plant, landed the lead left hook. Always, here's a little thing. Whenever there's a break, like whenever you're in a clinch something and there's a break, always kind of then is when fighters tend to kind of, some of them tend to switch off for those few seconds. And a good example I'll give you is when Cooper Pulev fought Vladimir Klitschko and he got knocked out in that 5th round. There was a clinch, there was a break, and Klitschko just kind of got on his toes, bounced a little bit, and then led with the hook, which knocked him out. At times when the referee does that, when they break the fighters and, you know, it's kind of a lull in action, some fighters do tend to switch off, and that's when they end up getting caught, which I think was the same for Caleb Plant in the 11th round. So he goes and gets caught by Canelo, gets put up against the ropes and goes down. And for me, the writing was on the wall, because it didn't look the heaviest of shots he was getting hit with. I guess he was kind of getting broke down throughout the fight, but when he got back up, his legs looked shaky to the point when he walked across the ring and you could see legs weren't underneath him. Legs definitely weren't underneath him. Canelo then went in for the kill, got him up against the ropes, landed a couple of shots. I think it was a right hand that really finished it. Caleb Plant went down, referee waved it off, rightly so. I think the fight was beaten out of him at that stage, and I think that had he got up and the referee had let it go on, we could be talking about a very, very bad knockout. A very bad knockout for Caleb Plant if that had happened. So referee, and I think the corner were stopping the fight anyway. I think they'd seen enough. So Canelo is now the undisputed super middleweight world champion. He has done this in 11 months, which is quite remarkable, really, when you think about it. You know, yes, I'm not going to say that the super middleweight division is stacked full of talent. It's not. Like, it's not the most difficult division in the world in terms of the fighters. You know, Caleb Smith, Billy Joe Saunders is really a middleweight. Caleb Plant, who's never gone to this level. So yes, you could say it wasn't the hardest division to win Undisputed in, but nevertheless he had to do it. He had to beat the guys who were in front of him, and he's now Undisputed Super Middleweight World Champion, the first in history, I believe. I don't even think in the three belt era there was an Undisputed Super Middleweight World Champion. So credit to Canelo. He really is building a legacy for himself. The question now is, what do you do next? He said that, you know, having been so active this year, that it's going to be probably May before he fights again, you know, and that's an interesting one because we're on November now, so we're a good 7 months away from May, 7-8 months. So it gives you kind of time to think who he might fight next. Would he fight a Charlo? He seemed quite happy with PBC. To Eddie Hearn's dismay, maybe he said he's been kind of hinting at that. So would he fight Charlo next? Benavidez potentially. There's fights to be made there. You know, if you want to stay at 168, I'll tell you what I think. And I might even touch on this more in a separate video, but I think Canelo's next move is stemming from how Artur Beterbiev looks against Marcus Brown. I think that if Artur Beterbiev goes in there against Brown, it looks devastating. Canelo may stay at 168 or may fight Dimitri Bivol. But if he goes in there against Marcus Brown and he lampers to a decision, or he looks, you know, he wins but doesn't win, you know, very well, or maybe even gets dropped because Brown has speed and a bit of punching power there, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Canelo versus Beterbiev next year. If that was the case. If he went in there against Marcus Brown and didn't look good, looked disaged and looked like he'd aged overnight, we might see Canelo fight him then next. Potentially Triple G as well. I mean, I don't really want to see the trilogy of that fight, to be honest. But the Zone, whether he still works with the Zone or goes back to the Zone or not, I don't know. But from the minute Canelo signed with the Zone back in 2018, Triple G trilogy was the fight they wanted. That was the fight that they wanted. Do they still want that? If they're doing pay-per-view now, I mean, that was kind of one of the perks about that. If they did get it on the Zone, Canelo versus Triple G, that it would be subscription, wouldn't be pay-per-view, probably would be now. But we'll wait and see. So that's my thoughts on that. Let me know yours. It was a good fight. I credit to Caleb Plant. He proved me wrong in the sense of he was a lot more competitive than I thought he would be. You know, I don't think anyone was picking him to win the fight, but I definitely was and I'll admit I was dismissive of him. I didn't think he'd really be competitive at all. So he proved me wrong. He done a lot better than I gave him credit for. I really do. I was quite impressed at times with him in there, what he was doing. So credit to him. Canelo Alvarez, big up to him. Now him and Josh Taylor, undisputed. Whatever you want to say about Teofimo Lopez. I mean, that's why I don't like franchise, because it makes an absolute mockery of Undisputed, because no one knows what the hell's going on there. So yes, as I said, credit to, and I don't think Showtime didn't have him listed as Undisputed, because they done a little on the feed I was watching, it was Showtime, and they done a kind of Undisputed Champions in the 4 belt. They didn't have Teofimo down, so God knows what's happening there. But now, lads and lassies, I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to do some more videos today, and maybe even do a live stream this evening. I'm going to finish my tea. Hard to do. Of course I do that. Go down the wrong way. For now, lads and lassies, I'll leave you with that. Have a good little laugh at that. If you could, like the video, subscribe, of course, if you haven't. Fuck's sake. That would have to happen, wouldn't it? But if you could, subscribe, like the video if you haven't, and hit the all notification bell to help your boy out. For now, I'll talk to you. Peace.